Okay. And hello, everybody. Wait a minute. I'm trying to operate this thing. And hello, everybody. I don't know if we're live right now, if you can see us. Yes, I think you can. Well, that is good. Sorry for the delay. Maybe some of you came in for 7:30 and now it's 7:45. What can you for 7:40? What can you do? I'm not an on time dude. But anyway, what the weird thing that happened was we were just about to go live on time actually, and then Facebook decided nope. Which is, you know what? That's not even Facebook. It's just my internet went dead. Which sometimes, make me think maybe somebody in internet land has it out for me. I don't know. But I guess I'll never find out. Anyway, welcome to Going Crazy. This is a show I do every Monday, every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Usually, sometimes we're late, sometimes we're not. I have just interesting guests on. Sometimes I know them very well, sometimes I don't. Today I decided to, I have a friend who watches the show, and she said, "Hey, you should talk to Kimberly Jones." Like, oh, interesting. And then I saw her YouTube video, which I think I saw before anyway. It was fascinating. It concerned Black Lives Matter. Also, she wrote a very interesting book about that. So I said, hey, maybe I'll just bring her on. We'll talk about it for a while. You guys can, write us some comments if you're interested, and maybe we'll answer you. But without further ado, we didn't get to talk a lot before the show because the delays and shit. But I guess we're just going to start right now. So please welcome Kimberly Jones, everybody. Oh, wait, hold on right here. Wait. Okay. Yes, I believe we are live together on the same screen. How you doing? What's up?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Sometimes when the internet shuts off just before I stream, I'm thinking like maybe Facebook doesn't want us to talk about Black Lives Matter. Maybe they care about my 30 to 200 people that watch this stuff.
That's a small army.
So how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I wish they were my army. I don't know how much they would do for me though. They are loyal people. They come back and they watch, but I don't know if I'll need a kidney. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that they're my people, but we'll see. I guess we'll see. I guess maybe. So where are you at right now in the States?
Atlanta, Georgia. I'm originally from Chicago, but I've been living in Atlanta now for about 15 years.
Okay. And how's that treating you? How's Atlanta treating you?
I love it. I love the weather change. Chicago is very cold. Atlanta is not very cold. We have very mild winters here, not too many natural disasters. And, cost of living is relatively fair. So I like it here.
All right, that's cool. I can identify from Berlin. Like cost of living is pretty fair, and the weather's okay. Especially now with global warming, we're getting the good side of it before we burn out. We're getting better winters.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I said, like we have a common friend, and she sent me the video, which I think I already saw. And I thought it was really, really powerful. I think I don't know if you guys saw it at home, but you should check it out. But I really love the way you put things. Like I think my theory is like the reason it resonated with so many people is because you kind of you put it in very realistic terms, right? Do you feel that way? Do you feel like people I don't know, got like a very clear message from the stuff that you said?
I'd like to hope so. That's my hope, is that is what people got. I'm a person who believes in keeping things very like clear and concise. That's been my, love language, my communication style, my entire life. I'm just like, cut to the chase, give me the meat. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to get? What point are you trying to get across? And so I think that that's because that's the best way for me to receive information. That's the way I disseminate information. So I think that more than anything, because it's a little it's like the video is like around 6 minutes, a little over 6 minutes, I think. And I think that that's the world we live in now. Like people like things to be like short and to the point.
Yeah, that's why I do an hour live stream, just to give people exactly what they want. Yeah, I get that. I think it resonates like for me. Like you're a writer as well, right? You're an author.
Yes,
I also write. I write for TV and movies. I think that when you write stuff, you kind of get to this place where you realize that people's actions speak louder than their words. At the end of the day, like characters, and I think that the point, like I'm from Israel originally. Like now I live in Berlin, so obviously I have my own view on being a minority here at least, and I think that the what my perception of what people don't really understand is, okay, so now things are cool. Now things seem to be like relatively okay, but they have a hard time taking responsibility over the past, over the fact that some people did not get the same opportunity as other people in the past, and they have to start from scratch, and they have the perception of, oh no, we're starting in the same, let's just forget about everything. And I think in your video you put it very well.
Yeah, I think I think the way that you described it is like so perfect, right? It's like we're not all starting at the same starting line. Like the starting line is like is a very, very different place. And I think that people, have to reckon with that, because I think part of the, particularly here for African Americans, part of the narrative have been like, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, just like get your crap together, right? You'll be fine. Like, why can't you just do what everyone else did and just like be okay and be fine? Like, why is it my problem that you have economic disparagement, you have healthcare disparagement, you have food deserts in your communities, you are over policed? Like, just get your life together and that won't be your situation, I think has been the sentiment. And I think, I can't speak for the entire Black community, but I know the conversations I've had throughout the diaspora, and not just here in America. I talk to people in Great Britain, and I talk to people in places like Australia and Africa and Haiti and different places all over the world, and the diaspora as a whole. Feels that has been the great marketing plan of like Black people just need to like do better and they'll be fine. It's like people are unaware of the systemic policies, particularly here in America, that are at play that disenfranchise people from doing just that, from pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. And I think, when I talk to Black people as a whole and ask them, what is it, people want to know our demands now. What do we want? And universally, what people come up with in one way or another is, we just want to be left alone. Like we don't want anybody to give us anything. We just want people to not hassle us as we try to figure it out on our own. We don't. People say that there's more crime in the Black community. Is there more crime, or is there just a setup for more arrest? Are people getting arrested for menial crimes, whereas these crimes are not concerns in other communities? So, and it's like that kind of stuff. And there was a lawsuit here in my town that I live in Atlanta in 2015, where the actual officers of the community filed a lawsuit against the state to say that we are being asked to over police these marginalized communities. We are being asked to allow the state to meet budget by writing tickets in these communities where we feel like chances are high, because people are impoverished, that they may have more moving violation infractions. Their tag might not be together. Their license may be expired. All of these things that are, related to the fact that they are, grossly impoverished. And like, if you have to make a decision between whether or not you're going to feed your kids or spend $200 to renew your registration for your car, you're probably going to make sure that there's food in the house for the kids, and then continue to drive that car to go make the minimum wage you make, which is not a living wage. And so there is a system that is, if it's not affecting you, you don't see it.
So do you think that like, how much of this do you think is related to the idea of not the idea, but the structure of poverty as like, as you said it, is like, if you come from a place of hardship for many, many years, you're still trying to get out of poverty as a society. And
Right.
then how much of that is actual active racism, do you think? I mean, I know the two are interconnected because some people say,
Right.
oh, they're this way because they're this race, but I'm sure that a lot of people know how to make that distinction. Well, actually, I'm not sure, so that's what I'm asking you.
Yeah, I don't think that everyone can make that distinction. I don't think that people do actually make that distinction, and I think there is a willful ignorance there, right? Of wanting to just like not deal with it. Like, this isn't my problem. It's overwhelming. I don't want people trying to tell me that I'm a bad person. Like, that's the biggest issue, is that people don't want to make that connection because there's this innate desire to be good and to be right in a situation. And so to grapple with the fact that you may benefit from a racist system, most people don't want to grapple with that, because what they hear is, you're trying to get me to admit that I am a participant in something that is wrong. And that's not something that I'm willing, able, and ready to grapple with, admit, own, work against. So what I'm just going to say is that you're making it up, because that's easier than to grapple with the fact that my Black counterparts make 67 cents for every dollar that I make, even if the statistics show that the person is educated at the same level and has similar work experience. Black people make 67 cents for every dollar that white people make in America. And there was this amazing hashtag that went around on Twitter here in the literary world called Publishing Paid Me. There was this hashtag Publishing Paid Me, and people posted what they got for their advances, what their back end points were. Like, authors were fully transparent about what their deals and their contracts look like. And the differences were it was astounding to look at the differences, to look at, Black authors who are New York Times bestsellers who got half of an advance than like a first time white male writer.
And you think this is because of just capitalistic tendencies? Like, somebody comes in and says, well, you come from a place where you don't expect to be paid that high, so this sum will look a lot to you. But other people who come from, I don't know, like the white authors or whatever, that come in from maybe more established homes, or maybe more established, I don't know, they get better advice or whatever, and then they go, no, that's not enough. I know how this market works. Is that it? Or do you think there's an actual level of, well, that is, I guess, a level of racism to it, but like, is that just like, oh, they're Black and we need to pay them less? I mean, that sounds.
I think that there is some truth in, if you unpack it all, there's some truth in both. I think that people are not consciously saying like, I'm going to pay black authors less money, but I think that what is at play is implicit bias, exactly as you described it, is that it's like, I am going to offer the bare minimum, and I'm certain this person is not getting offers from other spaces, or also I'm going to offer, even though I'm excited about this talent, I'm going to offer the bare minimum. And if they take it, then they just take it. But I think that plays into the larger system of, if you block people from having economic wealth, then one of the things that comes with that block is a block for economic literacy. You don't learn about finances and negotiating if you are not in a position where you have anything to negotiate or any finances to manage. So when you look at what happened in this nation of, over 200 years of slavery, where Black people worked for free. And then after that, you look at Reconstruction era, where people were able to kind of pull themselves up by their bootstraps and get it together. And then all of the cities, over 40 cities where Black people built a certain level of economic wealth and stability, those cities were burned and brutalized, and not just by vigilantes and citizens, although that did happen in a lot of those cities. A lot of that happened, it was government sanctioned. Tulsa, Oklahoma was bombed by the US government.
Why?
There was an incident that happened very similar to Emmett Till. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Emmett Till case over there, but Emmett Till was a case that was like the catalyst for the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s. was a young man, a 14-year-old boy who was accused of whistling at a white woman, which was illegal at
Oh,
the
I
time.
heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, she was accused of whistling at a white woman, and so as a result of that, he was brutally murdered and put in put in water and was massively deformed when they found his body. And his mother, as a statement to the movement, decided to hold an open casket, even though he was. I mean, the way that his body looked, it was horrific to look at. His mother
Yeah.
chose to do that, and so. There was an Emmett Till-esque situation that happened in the Greenwood area of Tulsa, in that a young boy was allegedly like tried to do something like get on an elevator with a white woman and alarmed her. It was kind of like the Karens of the day, and so she told this story, and so white vigilantes came in the middle of the night to that town to try to get that boy to hang him, to lynch him, and the town started to fight back against these vigilantes who had entered their town. There were a World War I, I think, veterans that were in the town who had some skill of training, and they tried to fight back the vigilantes. And when it started to get out of control, the federal troops showed up, and instead of getting the vigilantes out of this town that they didn't believe in, they bombed the town. They bombed the entire town.
Wow.
A town that was a thriving economic mecca for Black people. People referred to it as Black Wall Street. There were over 600 businesses there. Home ownership was up to about 75% of the town. A thriving Black town. That one road.
When was this? What year? What year was this?
This was 1920.
Wow.
1920. So
were there other towns like these, or was this like a singular?
No, I can name about 50 towns that this happened in.
And this and then they got shut down because of racism.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So, yeah. Rosewood, Florida is another incident. There was a similar incident in Nova Scotia, several incidents in Florida. There was the Great Sharecropper Massacre in Florida, where 845 sharecroppers basically asked for more money because sharecropping was, a step above slavery. And they basically said, this is not a living wage that we're living on. We have organized, we formed a union, and these are our demands. And their answer to that was they murdered them all. And they sent in federal troops to do that. They murdered 846 sharecroppers.
Wow.
So this happened continually through the 50s. Like I said, I am doing research on it right now for a documentary that I'm working on. I'm up to about 45 cities that I found. That Tulsa was definitely the worst, but I found about 45 cities that had similar slaughters. And so what I'm saying to that is this is the time period in which post-slavery people were trying to get themselves together and create their own towns and do exactly what people say, pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And every time they got to a certain level of success, it was ripped. So then you fast forward, now we're heavily into Jim Crow, and there are literally laws that don't even allow you to like drink at certain water fountains. You have to ride in the back of the bus. You're not allowed to vote. Like all of this stuff that is happening during Jim Crow in the 50s and 60s that we now have to fight again, which again sets us in a position to not, how can you have control over your station when you're not even allowed to vote? And so there were all of the fights that happened in the 50s and 60s, and still there were Black people, trying to thrive and working through it and still going to medical school and becoming doctors and all of this, predominantly at that time at HBCUs, historically Black colleges. But again, you're looking at a community as a whole that's having to start over. And we're talking as recently as like 1955, that's having to start over from the very beginning. Once again, because the wealth that we did build during Reconstruction was burned out, was literally burned out. And so, but now we're having to fight for social justice. So you can't even fight for equity and economic justice because you have to fight just for your humanity during civil rights. You are fighting for the right to be able to, for your kids to be able to attend certain schools, to live in certain neighborhoods, to not have to ride on the back of the bus, to be able to vote, for there to be punishment for Klansmen who come to your house in the middle of the night and string you up, and there was no punishment for them. So when you're fighting for your humanity, you don't have the wherewithal to actually fight for equity. So we were still lacking in equity in the nation.
Mm. Yeah.
And people were still passing down generational wealth that was built on the backs of Black people during slavery. So you have companies like Brooks Brothers and companies like that who made their original money during the slave trade that still have generational wealth that's being passed down from one generation to the next. Brooks Brothers made all of their original money by dressing slaves. That was their niche market. That's how they started their company. And there are dozens of companies like that who not even just like we started during this time, like, no, the slave trade was part of big business for us. And so now you're in the 60s, people are trying to fight for their humanity. They get they get some resolve with all the laws and things that King and SNCC and C.T. Vivian and John Lewis and Rosa Parks and all those people fought for. And then you enter in the war on drugs, which that sounds like a conspiracy theory when you talk about it out loud. But there's
it seems like every decade they find something to bring people down with. That's the way it sounds like.
Yeah, it's like I call it slavery by a new name. Like every couple decades, there's slavery by a new name. And so the war on drugs, which I always tell people, like, I don't want you to believe me on this. I want you to actually do the research, because I didn't want to believe it when I first got introduced to this information, because it does sound like a conspiracy theory. And I was like, there's no way this could be true, but it is true. And the best place to look at is if you Google the Kerry papers, Kerry. He was a senator, and he actually like brought this to the forefront and fought for it. There's a great documentary on Amazon about it too, called Crack in America. But basically what happened was, to fund one of the wars that America was in, they flooded the Black community with drugs. And then after that, so what they did was, well, let me be honest, what they did was they allowed a regime of people to flood Black communities with cocaine. And that money that was made was used to fight the war. Doesn't that sound like a conspiracy theory? Something you see in a movie?
It makes sense to me. Like I wrote this show about international money laundering, and I had this conversation like behind the scenes with a guy who used to work for the CIA. And he told me like one of the ways that the American government makes money is they tax drug dealers by just following them and seeing who the money man is, and then grabbing them off the street and giving them a note for their boss so the guy doesn't get killed by the boss. They give him a note and they say, show this to your boss so they know that he knows why he's missing a few millions, because we taxed you for illegal profit, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as crazy as this all sounds, this is like a documented thing. There was an entire trial about it. There was this inquiry by a senator, John Kerry, and the documentation of it all is called the Kerry Papers, and it's on the internet. You can find it. Yeah. So they allowed the Black community to be flooded with drugs. And then they decided that they were going to change all of the laws during their war on drugs of Ronald Reagan. And they were going to make the harshest drug sentences that the nation has ever seen. But it was specific to crack cocaine, not even regular cocaine, but it was specific to crack cocaine, because they knew that's the drug that had emerged victor during this time in which they flooded the community with cocaine. So if you got convictions as it related to crack cocaine, you got the harshest sentences ever seen. And almost all of these sentences of these low-level drug dealers who were selling on the street, when the real money was coming from overseas and the government was aware of it, they were giving these African-American men life sentences.
Fuck.
For a user amount of drugs.
For a user amount, fucking.
For a user amount of drugs, they were giving them life sentences, and that's how they padded all of these private prisons that all of their cronies were lobbying to get open, and you recreate slavery. Now you have all of these black and brown, because it was also in the Latinx community, you have all of these black and brown men who are now in prison, in private prisons, doing free labor for major corporations.
Let me stop you at that point a second. Do you think that stemmed from them wanting to do that, or maybe they changed their tactic? Maybe they were like, okay, we're going to make money from this drug trade, right? But then now we're done with it. So the minute they're done with it, they're like, okay, they change their tactic to go against it, and they find that, obviously the communities that they flooded it with are now having the highest, problem with it. And then somebody jumped on that opportunity and said, well, if we're already doing that, why not? When were prisons privatized anyway in the States?
They were privatized like a little bit before this happened. So this was basically a way to fill them.
So maybe those kind of economic things just came together. Like a lot of the time when people talk about, I had a conspiracy guy from Israel on my show like a few weeks ago. I think that every time the conspiracies make sense, I think mostly if you follow the money. It doesn't have to be necessarily they pre-planned this, but if they already decided they're stopping to do the drug thing, and then they opened the prison. I didn't even know when they opened the private prison, but now that you're saying that, it makes a lot of sense. So why not? If we're already doing this and we already have the opportunity, why not pad our prisons and make a ton of money over that? Like,
exactly. And I think in terms of like, the racial aspect of it, where people were like, well, I'm sure these people didn't just wake up and was like, I'm going out to get black people. But I think that the issue is where the implicit bias lies, is that when you know that you have a group of people who are
you get cut off for a little bit.
Yeah, you know you have people who are economically vulnerable, who are emotionally vulnerable. Because this, the one part that people don't ever talk about in this entire journey of Blackness in America is the trauma, the psychological trauma of living and dealing with it, that people are unaware of. It's like my mother grew up, my mother was born in 1946. My mother grew up during the era of Jim Crow, where people were lynched. Like she saw lynched bodies on her way home from school.
Fuck.
Yeah, like, so she's, 10 years old walking home from school and you see your neighbor hanging. Like this was not uncommon for her to see. And so, anyone else who's born around the same time as my mother, who, these people who are like in their 70s or whatever, some of them who were on the other side of that, who then also saw these things, but they saw it from the perspective of like, this is just normal and these people are less than, so this is fine. Those people are still senators and congressmen and CEOs and principals at school. And they're carrying that sentiment of this body has no emotional value attached to it. I've been taught to detach myself from seeing harm to a person who looks this way. They care.
There are so many. I gotta say, there's so many similarities to Germany, like, but in a very different way. I think, like, like when you look at World War II, right? So after World War II, the Jews got their own state, so we went to Israel, and we had to start anew again. But nobody would. Well, we were, they had enemies around. There's a whole conflict and dispute around that area. But generally speaking, the minute we kind of stabilized the area, we got to an opportunity of kind of trying to rebuild ourselves after everything was taken away. At the same time, in Germany, you had all these people that, all right, so some of the Nazis were gone, but some of the Nazis were ingrained in the system. And then what happened was there was a huge, like around the 60s or something like that, there was a huge student rebellion against that. There were like trials and all that kind of stuff that was saying, wait a minute, we still have Nazis in the system. We need to get them the fuck out of there. And then slowly they started cleaning them. So I think there was a process, at least here, and this is what I feel today, there was a process of saying, okay, we fucked up, we're sorry, and we don't want to behave like that anymore. And of course you have some groups of people always going to behave the same way. But it feels like in America, what you're saying is like they don't want to face their guilt. They just want to say, all right, so this was this thing in the past, and it's in the past, so let's move on. And then they don't take responsibility for whatever damage they did along the way.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
It's fucked up. That's fucked up.
Tell me about it.
It's good we can laugh about it, right?
Yeah.
It's insane. You know what? Another thing I was thinking about, maybe these Southerners with all these kind of statues they want to keep up and stuff. This is something I noticed when I do comedy shows in Germany. Sometimes this is what I found, right? I found that some people don't like the Jews, or they use Israel as an excuse to not like the Jews. Like they don't even differentiate between Jewish people around the world and then Israelis. And
Right.
and when you kind of dig deep into it, they just found a way to kind of be okay with their grandfather, because they've been told stories about their grandfather. They kind of like their grandfather, and they wouldn't want to think about their grandfather as a killer. So the idea of Israelis or Jews being bad is not a bad idea for them, so they can relieve their own self from the guilt. And when I look at the southern states with all this kind of let's be proud again, I kind of feel like they're trying to mitigate some sort of level of self-blame and some sort of level of not wanting to say that maybe their grandfather was a child of the times. You know, I can understand, like I can understand Nazis were child of the time, but they were still fucked up. They still did fucked up shit, and somebody's got to take responsibility for it. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And that's the thing, like America has never atoned for its atrocities. It has never atoned for its atrocities. And so, like you said, when you don't do that, then the players are still in the system. And the players are still making laws. So laws that are affecting us right now were still made in 1976 by someone who was still a player in that system, who made that law. You know what I'm saying? Because they were like, you know, like the dog whistling stuff that Trump talks about today. Like he was saying the other day, oh, people who live in the suburbs, I just passed a law so that you're safe. Low income people, you know, can't come live in your neighborhood. When you have a president making those kinds of dog whistling statements about poor, because there's so many people you could lump into the group that he was clearly talking about. Poor people.
So Trump is saying that today, you're saying?
This was last week. Last week he tweeted, because that's what he does. He tweeted a statement saying that there was a fair housing law that was passed under the Obama administration, and he rescinded that and he basically said, like, he said, people living your perfect American dream in the suburbs, you don't have to worry anymore about low income people moving into your neighborhood, because I just rescinded the Obama era law of housing equity.
Let me ask you a question. What is it? Like, I mean, I have this joke on stage. I say, I have white privilege, but I didn't earn it, you know, because I'm Jewish. Like, I didn't do this stuff, but now I can look white, so I walk around and, you know. But what is it about blackness? Do you think it's just the difference? Like, do you think it's just this primitive thing where people see something that they perceive as different and are immediately afraid of it? Is it still that?
Mm-mm. No, I think what it is it's the same thing you were saying about people, you know, wanting to absolve their grandfather of being a bad person. I think that every decision that has been made as a direct hit to blackness has been an economic decision. And I think a way to justify it has been to create a very successful marketing campaign to say Black people are less than, Black people are violent, and Black people need to be managed and controlled. And that makes people feel okay with, during the time in which people owned slaves, that made them feel okay with owning a human being and treating a human being as a property, as long as you made sure that the consistent narrative was these people are bad. And I think that it was every step of every piece of slavery by a new name, whether you get into Reconstruction, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, war on crimes, redlining, all of the things that have been done have been economic decisions. And the only way to make it make sense is to say we have to do this because black people are bad. And it's been the most successful marketing campaign around the world. The world believes, by and large, to some degree, that they have implicit bias towards Black people because Black people are innately bad.
Somebody wrote a comment that's it's very conflicting. Can you see it? We can talk about that if you want. I mean, I'm all for answering conflicting questions. I wouldn't maybe.
Is that the ability of Black Lives Matter and its militant, psychophonetic snowflake followers continually ignore the rampant and escalating Black on Black violence and child murders is a study in denial and cognitive dissonance. It actually isn't. And I'll tell you why. Because the whole premise of Black Lives Matter was created and founded to address the issue of police officers brutally murdering Black people in the streets and getting away with it. And that we had video footage, we had all of this stuff in order to like say, this is happening, this is not a fair thing, we need to deal with that. There are tons of organizations that are addressing crime in the community. And let me also say that this whole notion of Black on Black crime is another thing that was created in the white supremacist handbook to make people believe that marketing plan that I said before, that Black people are innately bad. We all kill by proximity, unfortunately. White people kill white people, Black people kill Black people, Asian people kill Asian people, Latin people kill Latin people, Jewish people kill Jewish people. Like, we all kill by proximity.
I have a joke. I say, like, if you kill a Jew in Europe or America, that's anti-Semitic. But if you kill him in Israel, you just didn't like the guy.
Exactly. So it's like, we all kill by proximity. But again, to create something like Black on Black crime has been part of that tool of weaponry to say, oh, they are just killing each other.
Cut off for a second here.
Yeah, everyone's killing everyone who.
Here's another thing I wanted to mention. It's like, I feel like when like Jimbo, it's not like, maybe even if you look at some of your arguments and you're really convinced about your arguments, right? And I haven't done any research or anything like that, but it still doesn't put aside a few of the facts, even if you don't interpret the facts, right? If you look at people that were disenfranchised financially, we're not even talking, let's say there's no racist bias. Let's say nobody's trying to do anything, but it's just like, all right, people were taken. They did not come voluntarily to a nation. And then they were forced to work. And then there was bias against them, financial bias, and obviously racist bias for a while, right? And let's say it suddenly disappeared. Even if we play that game, if you have a community that, because of the financial history, is very, very poor, they will have to, in order to climb out of there, they're going to have to use certain, like, there's going to be a bigger drug problem than there's going to be in upper middle class areas. Maybe there's going to be certain types of crimes, maybe all that stuff, which I don't think anybody's trying to say that these things are not problems. What I think, maybe, I'm not an expert, but what I think that Black Lives Matter are trying to say is, as you said, Kimberly, is like, you're not asking for help. You're just asking to be left alone. You're just saying, let us have some time where we can rebuild ourselves without you constantly hammering at us. Because I don't think, like, if even from as a guy just watching this from outside of America, I don't see, and this is something also you said on your video, like, you're not trying to take revenge. Black people are not trying to take revenge. Like, there's no Black agenda against America that I am aware of. African Americans live in America and they see it as their nation. So I don't think there is any sinister agenda that you can, like, pull against this. So even if you have these valid points, I think looking at Black Lives Matter for a second from a perspective of, like, hold on, there's a point here. And this is an outcry, regardless if you agree with the political points. And I think that many things today are being obscured because there's a lot of media, like, outlets today, and they're all, like, a lot of points are being obscured. And what I liked about what you said specifically was that you cannot ignore the economic facts. You just can't ignore it. You can't, like, if a certain community is poorer and there's historical reasons for it, that's just the way it is. And then trying to deny it doesn't, it's not even your fault. If you were born 20, 30, 40 years ago, maybe you were born into the system. It's not your fault, but you can be aware of it without becoming angry. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's like, it's one of those things for me. It's like, just to circle back to what he's saying, to me, it's as simple as if I say that I'm having a fundraiser for liver cancer, and then you show up and say, I can't even believe the denial and cognitive dissonance that you would have when there are all these people dying of breast cancer over here. And it's like, and someone's going to raise a fundraiser for breast cancer. But this conversation today is about lung cancer. This is the conversation we're having. Black Lives Matter is a conversation about police officers murdering people in the street and how the distrust that breeds, even when you talk about Black on Black crime, why when a crime happens, no one is happy to participate with a police officer to get people information if you have an entire community that is stressed and has a distrust for the police officer because they've been able to get away with these brutal murders. Black Lives Matter is a conversation about how widely inappropriate it is for police officers to be able to act the way that they've been able to act in communities and get away with it. If you have an issue, Jimbo, with Black on Black crime, then you can start an organization that focuses on that and put all of that energy in it. But this BLM was started to address vigilante and police officers getting away with murdering Black people. That is the point of it. And so, again, it's one of those situations where it is one of the oldest distraction tactics in the book to say, I don't want to deal with that because I have to deal with my friend who's an officer who I think is a great guy being labeled as a police officer that's bad, and I don't want to deal with that. So instead, I'm going to say, but look at these people over here committing these crimes. Redirect. BLM is about vigilantes and police officers getting away with murders. There are tons of organizations that are addressing poverty and crime in the Black community. I can name 10 of them right now. But BLM has a focus. It has a point. It doesn't neglect anything else that's happening. It is not in denial of anything else that's happening. I just think it's really simple-minded to say that we are going to have to lump all of this together. And really the only reason you want to do it is because you want to be free of grappling with the truth and having your loved ones take responsibility for their actions.
I think that's correct. Do you think that some people have this idea of, I don't know, I mean, police officers, and maybe they know them maybe from movies, maybe just this kind of inner want to think that the people that protecting you are righteous, and something about this whole thing just rubs them the wrong way in that aspect?
Yeah, I think that that's true with a lot of people. But I think that anytime you enter any conversation in life with the idea to just say why you're right and why everybody around you and not to listen, then you are not growing as a human being. If you're incapable of listening to someone else, even if it's someone else that you feel on the surface you don't agree with, if you are incapable of entering the conversation and saying, let me sit and listen. When Gili and I wrote our book, I'm Not Dying With You Tonight, we took meetings with, because our book is about two girls who survived the night and race riots. We sat down with people who had survived riots. We sat down with a SWAT team. We sat down with police officers. We sat down with National Guard. We sat down with historians. We sat down with all types of people and listened. And listened for understanding. And we did not allow our egos to enter the conversation to say, I have the answer. I'm going to walk in and tell this officer what's what, and we'll see what he says, and I'll utilize that. We definitely didn't walk in with that space. We walked in and said, okay, we're listening. You're a SWAT team. How do we have this conversation? What does that look like? Why do you manage a crowd the way that you manage a crowd? Please educate us. And it was actually one of the members of the SWAT team that told us the route that we had the girls walking was incorrect. He was like, in order for a riot to escalate to this level and for the girls to have gotten here without having this happen, you would have had to have this. We'd have to be stationed in this way. This type of incident would have to happen. An officer would have to be down. He broke down everything that was wrong about our about our book and was like, and this is how you fix it. And the book was better served from having that conversation, coming from a place of learning and not coming from a place of feeling like I'm entering this conversation to tell you what's what.
I think it's important. Like I think like one of the reasons I do this live stream anyway is that I want to have I want to have the complex conversation. I really want to understand shit, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one of the things that maybe people don't look at is like if you have systematic, a system that systematically through time, you know, did not allow people to get out of poverty. And there is crime there as a high percentage, and then cops need to go there to solve all sorts of shit. And even if they have sensitivity training and all that kind of stuff, that can create an inherent bias for people. You know, if you work at, I don't know, let's say you work at a shopping mall, you know, and you're always seeing teenagers, and this is an area where they always get drunk and they always do drugs. You're going to have an opinion about teenagers, you know. And I think that maybe instead of thinking, oh, these people, I'm saying like maybe that's what people think with that you're ruining their depiction of cops. Maybe just understand that maybe even though some of these cops are truly aggressors, obviously, because you have to be at a completely different level to do the stuff that some of them do. But maybe also some of them are just also victims of the same system. And it's hard to see, you know what I mean? It's like they are victims of a system that puts them in the mindset, you know. Like I'm a vegan, for example, right? When people pay people to kill animals, I think what we don't see is that first off, nobody wants to do it. Like you take people, you put them in a position where they have to kill animals. And then if you think that these people are not going home and looking at humans differently, and you're looking at violence differently, I think that's a mistake. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration when people think, oh, now you're trying to vilify all police officers. I don't think that's true at all. I think it's a complex situation where people are being victimized, and either way you're looking at it from whatever political angle, that just needs to stop.
Yeah, it honestly, that's what it is. It's like it just needs to stop. And we also just like I'm glad you made that point, because it's just like at the end of the day, bottom line, like one of the things that I work on is making sure there's, diversity in literature and diversity in the literature that is getting into schools that the kids are reading. And one of the primary things that I tell people is this is not just about the marginalized children, who I do want to make sure that they're seeing themselves, reflected on the page. But this is also about making sure that like a white child who lives in Iowa that is in a community that is 97% white, and they've probably never in their lifetime actually seen a person of color other than on TV. It is just as important that they are getting this literature and this understanding and this like full breadth of history, because you do them just as much a disservice to leave them incapable of functioning in the world with people who are different than them than you do the child who doesn't see themselves reflected on the page. It's very important that we utilize art and things like that to nurture empathy in each other about our struggles, because it is, to a certain degree, there is a psychological component to this that people, like you said, are not paying attention to, that we've all been a victim of. So the whole thing is, it's like the same way we used to have this stigma about mental health, and people were afraid to admit that they had, behavioral health issues or mental health issues a while ago. And now we've set an environment where people are like, okay, this is it. I struggle with this thing. This is how I process it. This is how I get help. This is how I need you to help me when I'm struggling. We need to have that same kind of transparency when it comes to dealing with, and not just in America, globally, dealing with racial bias and implicit bias and racism and prejudice and all of that, and say, hey, look, we all of us live with a certain level of implicit bias, because we are all a victim of this like centuries old beef that we all have. And so we all need to be comfortable. The other thing is we have to like stop canceling people, right? When people mess up, we're like, that human being is canceled. Like, you cannot cancel a human being. That person still has to live and breathe and eat, and they're still going to be around. But you have to give them the space to like own what they've done wrong and make the necessary steps to correct it. And we have to be champions for people while they're going through that process, and not continue to browbeat them and say, no, I've decided you're canceled because you said this ignorant thing. Like, no, what we do is we're putting you on alert, that we're aware that you did this ignorant thing. Now you need to do the work, like with anything else, to fix it, to come back from it, to learn and grow from it. And then we welcome you back with open arms. But as long as we tell people, if you do a bad thing, you're bad, and then they try to fix it and we're like, no, you're still bad, then we don't give people any motivation to want to get better. And we all want to get better.
I agree with that. I think also we have I think human beings, maybe because the movies we watched, maybe because of religion or whatever, we want to believe that we're good, but at the same time, we are the cruelest creature on the planet. That's how we became the top. If we're talking about race, there's only one race, right? This is how we won the race. We are the cruelest creatures. So we're not good. We were not born good. We were born crazy animals. And it's fine to have an ideal of we want to be good, but the only way to become good is to look at your bad stuff. It's like, I equate it a lot of times with like going to Alcoholics Anonymous. You can't come in and you go, I like to have a drink once in a while. No, you're a bad person. And that's fine because we're all doing it together. But let's just here for. Yeah. Leah had a good question, which she's also the one who introduced us, Leah Brown. Are you feeling hope that things are really changing or maybe will change in the US?
I do feel hope. So Leah and I went to high school together, so we've known each other a long time. She was so quiet and sweet in high school. But she was just like this amazing human being once you like spend time with her.
Always the most dangerous people are the quiet.
Yeah. Watch the quiet ones. I do feel hopeful that things are changing. I do think people are having an awakening. And I think that we have a new generation of kids. We have a new generation of kids that are willing to push back on the ideals that their parents placed before them. And so I do feel like we're going to see change. And here's the other thing. I think people are not interested in seeing lip service right now. People want to see actionable items from government, from corporations, from individuals. And people are demanding that. They're demanding, like if you're going to be on this gravy train with me, I want to see what you're going to do. It's great that you made a post. That's great. What are you going to do? And so I think because the people are demanding action, we're going to see change.
I know you have to go soon, so I'm just gonna. I would continue this, but let me ask you this: like, just as a person, I'm highly interested. Two questions in the same question. One is I'm highly interested. Like, you find yourself. I guess I don't know exactly the history of how you got connected to the activism of this. But I'm guessing because of your video and because of the fact that you're an author and that some people picked up on, like, came to you to ask questions, et cetera, you maybe became some sort of driving force, not the driving force, but a part of the driving force, or, some sort of symbol in that. And how do you feel about that as a person? Like, how is it affecting you? And the same thing, somebody wrote, "Don't leave us alone with Ori." So that's one thing. And the second thing is something that I've noticed is that I feel like we're talking a lot about America, but I feel like around me, I mean, especially during the riots and stuff like that, Black people around in Berlin, even, or in Europe or around the world, I think they kind of got empowered to maybe also write some statements about racism that they've met. And so let's talk about a bit about that, and then maybe we can finish.
Yeah, I definitely, I think there was a series of us that were a catalyst for people to start having these conversations. I think that, obviously the most prolific catalyst of it all was George Floyd himself and what happened to him. And then, there were people like myself and Sonia Renee Taylor and Tamika Mowry who, echoed some things that people were able to utilize in their arsenal to have these conversations. But I think that, like I said, the global view of Black people, it awakened something in people that have been lying dormant. and not just Black people. I think
Yeah.
people who were allies who have been kind of on this path were pushed to work harder and do more. I think people who are new allies who had their eyes open and to view the situation in a very new way and who were ready to have the uncomfortable conversations and embrace their own bias in order to fight against this. I think they were awakened in a new way. And I think that because by and large, this movement has been met with positivity. I mean, we all have our share of trolls, we have our share of people who disagree, but I think that by and large, because the ally portion of the movement was so huge, that it made people feel comfortable speaking out. It made
Mhm.
people feel comfortable kind of like saying, you know what, since we're on the subject, here in Berlin, this has been my experience that I have carried this load. And, in England and in Australia and Africa and Haiti and, all these places all over the world, I think when people were seeing that the movement was met with positivity and grand allyship, people were like, okay, now I feel safe. Now I don't feel alone. Now I
Mhm.
feel like I know that there will be some people who will stand with me. I won't get canceled. I may get browbeaten, but some people will come to my defense. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that's the
It
most
is.
beautiful thing I've seen out of all of this.
Does this play like that was my first I think question, but just the personal angle of it, does it empower you to be in this position where you feel like you can be, I don't know, like a voice, or I mean, it gives, I'm sure that other than the fact that you're fighting for your own kind of your own personal battle with this, does it give you some meaning, some strength to be able to stand for it, to be a part of it?
Yeah, it definitely does, because more so than anything, I just think I just feel heard. I think that I feel like for the first time when I'm walking into rooms, because I've been doing this work for a long time, not at this level. The video definitely catapulted me into a different level with it, but I I definitely feel like for the first time I'm being heard, and not in a patronizing kind of way, that I'm being heard in a way where people are actually listening and actually want to help. So I feel like over the years when I've walked into a room, I've walked into the room somewhat from a beggar space of like, please, please, please help us with this thing. We want these books for these kids. We want this economic program. We want this community center. We want whatever it is that I was working on. And I had to come from a space of like hope, of like, oh my God, I hope they get it. I hope there's one person in the room that I could feel like I could get on bandwagon so we could get this thing done. And I feel like now I walk in the room, and I walk in the room knowing people are there to listen, and knowing that they are
Mhm.
there and that they've reached out because that's what they want to do. And it does make me feel empowered to do more, because I'm like, while I have this moment where people are listening and doing and helping, I better get as much done as I
Bam. I like
can.
that. So just to maybe give just the roadmap of maybe trying to do some change in the world. I think those two things are connected. No, like you feel like it's personal for you, and at the same time you feel like you can do something for somebody else in that same kind of ecosystem of change. No, is
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
that is that what that is?
Yeah, no, that definitely is what it is. It's like at this point I've like laid down like most of it feels personal, but the work is broad. And so I'm excited about being able to you know, if you reach 10 people, you've really reached 1,000. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. That's amazing, and I hope we can all. I'm gonna try and learn from it. I hope we can all fucking learn from it. Maybe JoJo can go start raising money for black on black crime if you feel so passionate about it, instead of bitching on it on live stream and trying to get away and go watch Netflix. Kimberly, this was great. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I did. It was so nice talking to you, Ori. And if ever you need me to come back, just reach out. I'll be happy to.
I'd love to. I'd love to. I'm sure I'm going to have a lot more questions for you. Thank you very
Yeah,
much
and
for
you
doing the
know,
show. Oh. Well,
No, I
what?
was gonna say, and you should definitely have on my co-author Geely. Um, she lived in she grew up here in the States, but she lived in Israel for a little while. And she served in the IDF, and she is my co-author. We have the one book out, and we have two more books coming together that we're working on. But she is a fascinating woman,
I would love
and
to.
yeah, and I think like a lot of people ask me how hard was it to write a book about race relations with somebody who is white presenting, like Geely. And I do think it's interesting what you were talking about with Israel and just like growing up Jewish and that kind of thing. I think it did inform the way she views the world and made it easier for me to do it with her because of the type
Mhm.
of conversation that we were able to have and just like educate each other and teach each other so much. She taught me so much about Jewish culture that I like did not know, was just plain old ignorant to. Um, and so it was
I
a good
think
exchange. Yeah.
I think that yeah, like I don't I think it was Dave Chappelle that had that joke. It was like, have you ever tried to compare sufferings with Jewish people? Like I think that Jewish people and Black people have so much in common. Like for just in terms of like the way we look at the world. And then some like I meet some Australian or some English person who's like trying to educate me about racism. Like, shut the fuck up, you idiot. It's just you're just trying to feel less guilty about yourself by lecturing me about this. How about you go back to your fucking? It's funny. So yeah, I feel like there's a. I would love to have her on. I think there's a big affinity there. I think yeah, and she sounds
Yeah.
fascinating. And please give her my contact. You
I
know,
will.
you had me at
She's
hello, as one would say.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate you, and I'll see you again soon.
Yes, thank you very much. See you soon, and have a great day. And if you want to follow, I guess you got a lot of followers at this point, but go follow her anyway. Go watch the video, buy the book, do whatever power I have in terms of salesmanship.
I
I'm
appreciate it, Ori.
all right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around. That was our show. That was fucking fascinating. I love doing this show. I didn't know what it was. I started in quarantine. Suddenly I have all these fascinating people on. I wanted to say thanks to Leah Brown to connecting us. It was fascinating. I learned a lot about the culture, Black culture in America, and all that kind of stuff that's going down there. I have a much better understanding of it now. I hope you do too. This show happens every Monday and every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Berlin time. And listen, on this Monday and this coming Monday, I'm just going to tell you who we have. On this coming Monday, I've got two great comedians. One's English and one's Romanian. And we're going to play the game Would You Rather? So that's going to be hilarious. It's going to be very interesting. I'll just give you an example of it. Would you rather lose the ability to read or the ability to speak? There's a game. That's what you do in the game. So it's like a philosophical game, but it's going to be funny. So again, this show, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's interesting, and sometimes, magic happens. And I felt like that today. It's amazing that you can just start a live stream and people will talk to you. And I learned a lot from it. I feel that the idea of empowerment through the things that you care about doesn't have to make you an egoist. You can go, I care about these things, but other people care about these things. So if I push the agenda that I think is a positive and good agenda, as long as you're not a Nazi or something like that, then maybe, you're also helping vicariously other people, which is, I think, maybe what happened in this movement. Like something happened in America. Unfortunately, some people, got killed. But then people started moving it, and it empowered other people to come forward with their stories and all that kind of stuff. And don't worry about it, Sonny, that you arrived too late. Please go to my page, and all the videos I have are going to be there. So it's not just live. The videos stick around. You can watch this entire interview. The minute this live cast is over, you will be able, in like 2 minutes, to watch the whole thing. Please go to my page, My Comedy Cult Ori Levy. I got a very interesting guest there. We have a Palestinian comedian on. I had a conspiracy guy on. I have a ton of people. And if you support this live stream and you think there's something to it, please do me a favor, share. share the live stream, share the page, share the video that remains after, and come back on Monday because we're going to have a great show for you. Thank you very much, guys. I love you. Thanks for sticking around. See you guys later.